Let's start by logging into MaaS. And once it loads, let's go ahead and type your org name. If you only have access to one org, then it'll automatically select that one. Once your org loads, let's go ahead and select mapping on the left side. It will default to configure, but before we go any further, let's review the submenu items. We have edit map. This is our map editor tool. After our venue, campus, building, and floor set up, we can add POIs and segments here. Configure. This is where we set up our venue, campus, building, and floor. We can also configure our floors to work with beacon providers. Publish. This is our publishing tool, which allows us to publish our map updates over the air to our targeted applications. Web settings. We offer a desktop version of our mapping experience, which we can configure here. We'll cover this topic in more detail in a separate course. Beacons. Our beacon dashboard allows us to easily monitor beacon status for your venue and flag problematic beacons that might require maintenance. Feedback. Users can leave MaaS feedback and enhancement requests here. And support, which links out to our support documentation. For now, we're going to stay in the configure screen, and I just want to call out our available options. We can search for a campus or building just by typing the name in the search box. So for instance, we can search for Miami or campus. We can toggle between draft and live venues. Venues that have not been published will only be listed in the draft list view. Venues that have been published will show up in both draft and live list view. So let's take a look at the difference between a live versus a draft map. Live maps are displayed in your application, selected when you create the venue. Live maps cannot be edited. Live maps are identified in the venue list as live venues, and live maps have a venue GUID that never changes. Draft maps are not displayed in your application, can be edited, are identified in the venue list as draft venues, and get a venue GUID each time the draft is published. Let's return back to our configure screen. And our last available option on the configure screen is add venue. This is where we set up our venue. Before we start, let's discuss our mapping hierarchy. There are several approaches we can take when setting up our venue. Scenario 1. We have a building. For this setup, we'd simply just create a venue, a campus, building, and its floors. Scenario 2. We have a hospital, and this hospital has 4 campuses. For this setup, we would create a venue, and within campuses, we'd set up all 4 buildings with their own unique addresses. This could also be done in the building level. This is basically preference. There's no right or wrong way. And we have scenario 3. This looks very similar to scenario 2. The only major difference is each hospital will be set up in its own separate venue, campus, building, and floors. So what does this accomplish? How does this differ from the second scenario? It really just boils down to publishing. If we bundle all our campuses into one venue like scenario 2, then when we publish our updates, we're going to publish for all campuses. Scenario 3 gives us a bit more control. We can publish each venue separately. So find the venue hierarchy that works best for you and your setup. Let's go ahead and tap Add Venue. We can enter a venue name. By default, new venues created will be set to active. You can uncheck this if you prefer to disable the venue from being accessed via an application or a desktop version. For now, we're going to leave active. You can also select applications that will have access to this newly created venue. If you've not set up any applications, simply click on the Funware logo labeled Account. Click Apps on the submenu, then New. Enter your application name, select your platform and category. You can always return to this screen later and enable or remove applications you want access to your venue. After your venue is created, you'll see this notification. You can click to dismiss. Before we move any further, you'll notice that if I hover over our venue, we can now delete by clicking on the trash can icon, or go back to the venue settings by clicking on the cogwheel. Let's click on our venue and create our campus. click Add Campus. Let's give our campus a name. I'm going to call it Little Stone Health Campus. If you hover over the campus, you'll notice we now have three options. We can delete the campus, we can rename our venue, see the campus and venue GUID by clicking on the cogwheel, or the web mapping icon, which is deactivated from this view and is only clickable after you publish your venue. Let's click on our campus and add a new building by clicking on the Add Building button. Let's type out our street address and hit enter. You'll see a preview of the venue on the right hand side, and below you'll get the lat and longitude of your building. You can replace the default building info with a more descriptive name. You can also click on the POI pin on the map and drag if the placement is not accurate. This will also affect the longitude and latitude accordingly. You can also select your location provider from the dropdown and enter your appropriate values. This is only used if your venue will have blue dot. If you're using locate, make sure and fill out the recommended values below and adjust as needed. Otherwise, you can skip this step and come back at a later time. Let's go ahead and hit create. Hovering over the building will display the cogwheel and trash bin icon. If everything looks correct, we can add a floor. Let's give our floor a name. We can call this floor 1 or level 1. It's important to mention that the floor name will appear in the app. Make sure to name appropriately as not to confuse end users. Let's enter the level of the floor. In this example, we're setting up the first floor. If our building had a basement, we would use -1, and then our first floor would use 1. We can drag and drop our PDF and SVG files from the browser or search our local computer. Try and avoid using file names with spaces. Use dashes or underscores. Also, make sure that the map sizes combined does not exceed 4 megabytes. You should receive 2 green check marks if successfully uploaded. If you selected Locate as your location provider, you need to enter the associated beacon UUID. Each location provider is slightly different. Typically, you would log into their portal, click on the beacon list view, select a beacon, and that beacon should have a beacon UUID assigned to it. This will send us back to the building list view. At this point, you can add additional floors or make any settings adjustments. If you're leveraging our mapping SDK, select Set as Default. This will make it the first floor to populate from the list view in the app.